For this video, I decided to move the camera a bit further away. I'm hoping that maybe it will help with picture quality. I tried to maybe use my mic from my headphones, but unfortunately that did not work with my camera. So sound quality, probably not the best. I checked and it didn't really show me in the internet when I would be receiving my mic. I hope it will be soon, but you know, it will probably take days. So my first few videos that I'm planning to film back to back at the beginning, they will most likely all be this sound quality. But we can deal with that, I hope. And we can move on with the actual theme of this video, which is why I decided to become a single mother by choice. And you know, I'm not yet a single mother by choice because there's not a child, but you know, why I decided to aim to become that. And I will be looking down into my phone, my notes. I will be needing them in order to be at least somewhat coherent with my speaking. We can start from my childhood. I knew always that I wanted to have children, you know, as long as I can remember. Maybe it has something to do with the way people buy baby dolls to their daughters to play with. Maybe that kind of creates this atmosphere around having children and creating a family for women. But, you know, at least for me, I always knew I wanted to have children. I always knew I wanted to have a family of my own, but the older I got, the more difficult it seemed. I do think this aspect is somewhat special because many people that I have seen in the internet that are single mothers by choice, they chose to have children alone without a husband or a partner because they weren't able to find the right person in time. So in my case, I was never even looking, and in that sense, I seem to be kind of an outlier. So in middle school, people would start dating with each other, and of course, I would look at that and be like, okay, I also need to join people with that, because before you can have children, you obviously have to have a husband. And in order to have a husband, you have to create that kind of deep relationship with someone else. And that kind of starts from dating people. But, you know, I really didn't feel like I didn't feel like I wanted to date anyone. And, you know, I didn't even feel like trying it. I was actually quite against it. And that was kind of my first realization that things weren't going to be like I thought they would be. And in the high school, I had kind of left all that behind me. Didn't really think about it anymore, you know, whether it was dating or whether it was having family in the future. I just wasn't thinking about it at all. But then at the beginning of university, I think it was my second year, and I was 21 or 22 years old. That's when I really got, I guess, baby fever again. And, you know, I thought if I was really going to just give up, I even thought about the only possibility that I knew at that time, that I could have a child by myself, which was basically going to a bar, picking up a random man, and then having unprotected sex, a one-night stand, and you know, trying to get pregnant that way. But it didn't seem too feasible, which is good. It shouldn't seem a feasible opinion to anyone, I think. It's quite reckless, in my opinion. So, you know, obviously I didn't want to take that route, but since I didn't know any other options, I kind of went to Google and searched how to have children without a husband, and that's how I found out this single mother by choice thing existed, so I had never heard about it before. Maybe it's the atmosphere in Finland because I'm not living in the capital. I'm living more to the countryside. So, you know, I just don't think that it's quite normal in here yet to have these multiple kind of family situations that you would see in bigger cities. I was pretty relieved when I found out that there were other people who were having children without partners, and it was peaceful. At that time I didn't see any clinics here in Finland. I did not look too deeply. It might have been possible, or it might have not, like it was 10 years ago. I'm not totally sure, but for me it was enough to know that it was possible somewhere. So if I really wanted to, I could just, fly somewhere and have treatments there. And I knew it would be quite expensive, but I had this mentality that if you wish for it enough, you will find a way to do it. And, for me it was reassuring enough that it was physically possible to do. I did not think about the monetary aspect at that moment. So after I found all that out, I was relieved, but I didn't really want to have children then and there. So, I was 21, 22, I was very young, at least in my own opinion, and I was still in university. And, if I was going to be a single parent, I would obviously need to do both the birthing the children part and also to make sure that I would be able to manage with costs by myself. And it didn't seem too great of an idea to have children that young, if that was the case. It wasn't a great timing, obviously, so I just let it be. And now it's 10 years later, a lot of things have changed. It's a long time, but also I think during that 10 years the biggest change was probably me starting working instead of studying. But the first job I got, it didn't really pay that much, so I didn't feel quite secure. I wasn't able to save anything at that point of my life, and I was able to pay away my student loan, so that was good. And I was able to pay my car off that I bought, that was also good. So I was able to get money and get some stuff done that needed to be done, but it wasn't really enough for me to feel completely financially secure. My job now is better than the job I had right after university, obviously, and I think my income is sufficient enough, but I haven't really had this job for that long of time. I have been working at my current job for 2 years, and I have managed to save money during that time, but it's not quite enough for me to feel secure. And I'm renting a place. I don't own a place. One of my goals was to have a house by the time I would be ready to have children. But housing prices, they're pretty high, and there's a limit of how large of a loan you can get as a single person. So yeah, we haven't really gotten there. I'm still hopeful because I am currently saving for a house, so I am hopeful that maybe I will be able to get the down payment ready before actually having a child. But nothing's guaranteed, so I don't know about that yet. But also this is Finland, so I'm pretty certain that safety nets here are very good. And if the worst comes to worst, I guess I could move in with my parents. I don't want to. There are multiple reasons for that. My parents and I, we do get along well, but we do get along a lot better if we don't have to live in the same house. I actually think that's the case for many parents and their children. You know, it's better to have some space from each other so you will be able to be more peaceful when you meet. But also, I realized last year that I'm over 30, and it's not like I have time forever. I think my idea of what is good age for having children comes from my mother. And my mother had me when she was 24 years old. So for me, that was obviously too young, looking at my life situation. So at that time, I was still in university. If I wasn't in university, or if I had a partner, I would have most likely considered that as a great age to have children. But I'm not in the same situation as my mom. So even though I think that my body wise, that would have been the great age, you know, life situation just didn't allow it. I feel like having a child at that age in my life situation would have been quite irresponsible. My mom had her youngest child, so my youngest brother, when she was 30 years old, and in my opinion, that's already quite old age to have children. So that's kind of what woke me up. I was like, oh no, I'm actually over 30, and I really need to put more thought into having children if I'm really going to have them. It was a bit like, I'm already this old, should I just, you know, maybe think of giving it up because my life situation isn't really where I wanted it to be when I was considering when to have children. But ultimately, I decided that I would be able to do it because, like many people have said in the internet, uh, there isn't really a time when you're completely certain that you're ready to have children. I guess this is as ready as I will be, at least in the next few years. And for me, 35 is kind of the limit. If I don't have even one child when I'm 35, I might just consider giving up. I feel like everything will be more difficult the older you get. I do know that many women get children even older than 35, but for me it's kind of a limit. Both, what I feel would be more difficult than I would be ready to accept, and also what would be acceptable age thinking about future. Because I also think that when you have children, you obviously have to be responsible for them until they are adults. I think in Finland many people leave their homes when they go to university, so around 18, 19 years old. That's what I did, that's what my youngest brother did, and my older younger brother, he also left home, so he didn't go to university, he went to study elsewhere. But the main point is, I think people in here leave their homes quite early compared to some other places. And for me, I was thinking that I would like my raising of children to end before I got too old. So I was thinking something like in my early 50s, my children would be ready to move out. And in order to do that, I would obviously need to have my children in my early 30s. So those are kind of the reasons why I chose this timing, even though I don't feel like I'm completely ready for it. Another reason was that my brother and his wife had a daughter. So this was a few years ago. And for me, I think it was a great experience. So I have been babysitting a few times, well, more than a few times, but yes, it's been multiple years, especially right after she was born, when she was still a little baby. I think it was a great experience for me because I was able to experience what it would be like to actually take care of a baby. Obviously, I was there mostly during evenings. I wasn't there that many times when she was just a baby. I've been there more after she had grown up a little bit. But I remember one time, so I went there evening, I think it was like 6 o'clock maybe, and I stayed overnight, and her parents came back the next day during maybe 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon or evening. My biggest fear, I guess, or my biggest insecurity about getting along with the baby was that if baby woke up in the middle of the night, I would not be able to hear it and wake up myself, because I'm a pretty deep sleeper. So that was kind of my biggest fear scenario, that I would just leave my baby to cry for a whole night, which would be basically a torture, and I would wake up in the morning and be like, oh no, how long have you been crying? But no, I went to watch my brother's daughter, and she was still quite small. She was sleeping in the cot next to the bed, and I was sleeping in the bed. I didn't dare to fall asleep at first, so I think it was 1 or 2 o'clock night, and I just kind of decided that I needed to sleep, because her parents wouldn't be coming back until late afternoon. I would have to take care of her the whole day before that, and in order to do that, I felt like I would need some sleep. I kind of forced myself to go to sleep. It wasn't too difficult, so I'm a deep sleeper. I'm also very good at falling asleep. So I went to sleep, and then I woke up 1 hour later, and the baby was making some small noises and turning in her cot, and I was pretty surprised that I actually woke up to that. But I went back to sleep because there wasn't really anything I needed to do. And I think it was hour later I woke up second time, and the same thing happened a couple more times during that night. My brother's daughter, she wasn't that young at this time. She was already able to sleep through the night without feeding, so that's why I never thought about going to get her a bottle or something. I knew that she wouldn't need it, so I fed her again in the morning. But yes, she kept making small noises. At one point she kind of cried a little. I'm not completely sure why. I just pulled the blanket. It was kind of rolled up under her. I pulled it out and put it on her, and she fell back to sleep. There wasn't really anything for me to do, but this made me convinced that yeah, I would wake up. It's actually a lot easier than I ever thought to wake up to even some little noises that babies make. I don't know if it's kind of programmed into people that they wake up to those noises, or if I was just too nervous and didn't sleep too deeply. I don't know, but for me, I think that was very reassuring experience. Of course, there are other things like changing diapers, putting on clothes, taking off clothes, playing with toys. You kind of get this feel of how to be around babies. It does help, I think, and that's kind of also why I thought that now would be a good timing, because I kind of got rid of my insecurities. So because this single mother by choice thing was something that I had never heard about, I naturally assumed that no one around me had also heard about it, and I think I was correct. Everyone's reactions were kind of, you're going to do what? The first person I told about it was my grandmother from my father's side, and the reason I told her was because that side of the family, my father's side, I feel like they're a bit more open about a lot of different things. For example, my brother married a woman who was born in Finland, but whose parents were not born in Finland, and she also had a child from previous marriage. and my grandparents from my mother's side did not take it very well. So, they're more conservative. My brother's relationship with my grandfather, it's still not fixed, even though it's been multiple years. So I'm a bit more wary about my mother's side of family. My father's side, my grandmother from that side, she was completely fine with my brother's marriage. So I felt like she would be the natural person to go talk to about things when, trying to test out things with someone who's a bit more kind of lenient, a bit more accepting about things. So I told her, and she seemed completely fine with it. She didn't really want to have a lengthy conversation about it. She switched the subject pretty soon afterwards. But I do think my grandmother might have been a bit disappointed because I think she didn't think that I had no plans to marry anyone. So in that sense, maybe she was a bit disappointed about it. But yes, all in all, I think it went well. After I had talked with my grandmother, I actually booked my first appointment to the fertility clinic, and it was only after that I decided to talk to my parents. So I went home. My mom was on her computer. I just went to speak with her. There's another chair in the room, and I just kind of told her, I have been thinking of having a child, and my mom, she turned around and looked at me and was like, with who? And I just told her that by myself, and her answer was, it's not possible. And then I told her about, having an insemination in a fertility clinic with donated sperm, and she was maybe apprehensive. I'm not completely sure, but she went kind of quiet and seemed to be thinking about it. It was a bit awkward, so I left the room and I met my dad at the hallway right outside of the room. And my mother kind of called after me and told me that I should tell father also what I just told her. So, I kind of told my father. I think I told it in one sentence, everything I just told my mother in multiple sentences. So I just said everything to my father, and my father was like, oh, okay, that's what you're going to do? And he seemed pretty happy. It wasn't the apprehensive kind of, you're going to do that, but it was, more happy, surprised, but, happy. And I felt it was pretty awkward. So my parents knew I would be coming there. It was weekend, and they had, filled up the hot tub we have in our backyard, and, heated the water up. So I just told them that I was going to go in, and, they took a quick shower, went to the hot tub in the backyard, and I think maybe 10 minutes after that, my parents both came to our terrace in the backyard, and by that time they both seemed really happy. I think my mother probably had harder time to accept it, but I think in the end she was actually more excited than my father. My dad, he was also obviously happy, and I think he's still happy. It's not like he's gotten less happy as time went by, but I have had multiple kind of failed cycles along the way. My mom can kind of ask me for updates, show that she's very interested in what's going on, but my dad, he's obviously a man. I don't think he can just come to me and ask those kind of questions. So I'm mainly reporting to my mom when she asks. I'm not completely sure what she's relaying back to my dad. But yeah, in that sense, it definitely feels like my mom is more excited of the process. But I think it's also just a culture of Finnish men, or I don't know if it's all men. They don't really talk about things like this, except maybe with their own wife. So, that's natural. So, my mother said that she had noticed that, I didn't want to date anyone, obviously. I wasn't really hiding it. There were multiple occasions, especially after I got older, that my relatives would kind of ask me, did I have anyone I've seen? And obviously the answer would always be no. My mother obviously had picked up on the fact that I did not want to date people. I did not really like having anyone that close proximity to me, and she had equated that to me not wanting to have children because, in her opinion, if I wanted to have children, then I would obviously be aiming to have a relationship with someone. I would be aiming to, get married and have the family in a correct way. Since I wasn't doing that, she assumed that that wasn't what I wanted. Um, and, it really wasn't, but only just the husband part. So my mom, she was actually really happy that I did want to have children of my own, and she didn't seem to mind the part of not having a husband at all. I think she probably, just had never thought that it was possible that way. So when she realized that, oh, it can be done like this, she was all for it. I also told both of my brothers. So my first brother heard it about the same time my parents did. He actually heard it from my parents. He was home during that same time that I was visiting. And my other younger brother heard it a bit later. So I went to visit him and his wife and told both of them at the same time. And, they were obviously happy. And what my brother's reaction, it was obviously the okay kind of reaction because, what could they possibly say about it? If my brothers came to me and kind of told me that they wanted to have child, I would also be like, okay, you do you, whatever you wanna do. So these videos were about my reasons of why I have chosen to do what I have chosen to do, and also the kind of reaction that the people around me have had. I think this is enough for this video. The next video, it is kind of related. It will be about kind of my thought process of what are things I considered when choosing whether or not to become a single mother by choice. And I think I will be also mentioning the psychologist visit that one has to do. It's mandatory in Finland if you are doing fertility treatments using donated sperm or eggs. And it's mainly obviously for couples because the situations where you have two parents but one is not blood related to the child can be somewhat difficult. So that's mainly what the psychologist visit is for. But anyone who uses donated eggs or sperm will have to go there, even if they don't have the exactly same troubles as a couple would have. I will be going through those kind of things in the next video.